What's up guys, Chris here, back with a new video in the APS CAM870 series videos. Today we are going to be taking a look at how to disassemble the trigger group for the APS CAM870 system. And at first glance it might look intimidating and a bit complicated, but it's really not that difficult. There's not a whole lot of parts, but there are some parts under spring tension. This one is putting tension on the sear from the trigger, and below here you have a spring putting pressure on the hammer, and here we have a spring putting pressure on the carrier dog, I believe this is called. So to get this apart, we're going to need a tiny pointy tool. That's to push out the pin for the sear. And I also have on hand a couple of different sizes of punches. So that's pretty much all you need. Now, I'm going to assume that this is in the state that it was when we removed it from the rifle, which means that the safety is going to be on and the hammer is going to be down, cocked into the sear. So the first thing we want to do is release the spring tension from the hammer. And to do that, put your hand securely on top of the hammer, take it off safe, and release the hammer forward. That way, I've done the mistake of having the hammer drop on my knuckles and on my fingers, and it hurts. There's quite a bit of pressure on here. So this is where we want to be at when we're actually disassembling it. And what we're going to do first is we're going to remove this large pin here that goes across here. We're going to remove the trigger pivot pin, which is this one. We're going to remove the safety detent pin to be able to remove the safety, and there's a spring in here and a tiny ball bearing sitting down at the safety, so be careful not to lose that. So we're going to pop this out first. Take a medium-sized punch and simply press this out. It comes out like so. And there's a C-clip on one of the ends. You don't have to take that off. That's just to keep it in position in the trigger group, right? Next, we are going to be removing the trigger pivot pin with a slightly smaller punch. This should come out. Actually, before we do that, we want to remove the spring that's putting tension on the sear. And you can use the tiny tool that I was talking about. Go in there and remove it like so. There's not a whole lot of tension on it, so it should be fairly simple. So right, now we're going to take out the trigger pivot pin, and it should slide out really easily at this point, like that. And at this point, we're going to be able to lift up the trigger and remove it, and it's going to go past this little tab. So you might have to fiddle a little bit. Let's see if I can. So you want to lift it up at the back, out and over that, and take it out like so. And these parts are riveted together, I believe, so you can't do much here. One of the things that I'm having problems with is that this bar on the trigger is not giving enough actuating push onto the sear to properly release the trigger, but I'll cover that in my mod video, so we'll put that to the side. So now we're at this stage, and from here I normally don't have a specific process. The taking it apart is simple. You just have to, there are a couple of parts that are interlocked, so you have to remove one to get the other off. But other than that, just get everything out, and I'll cover how to put things back in the reassembly video. But what we can do in here, since we're working in this area, take out the safety detent pin with a tiny punch. And there's not really a lot of pressure on the spring in here, so you should be okay. I was wrong. So that, fortunately, I caught it. So okay, be careful of that. That never happened before, but so keep a thumb on top when you remove your punch. And if it doesn't come out, you can simply lift it up with this tiny tool. Now, there's a bearing in here. I don't think I can get any light in to show you. Let's see if it comes out. It does not. So we're going to push the actual safety out and remove it, giving the ball bearing a little space to move around. And we're going to come in from the top and push out the bearing. So make sure you don't lose that. As always, you should have a parts tray available. So I'm going to do that now. Put all of my removed parts in here, just to make sure nothing goes rolling off your table and you lose it. Right. So now, let's see, I have to think a little bit here what we want to do. What we have to do now is remove this pin, which is holding the shell lifter in place. And to do that, you have to remove one side, a C-clip from one of the sides to be able to push that out. So what I like to do is use my tiny tool. There's a joke there that I'm not going to touch. You could use a small flathead or whatever, and you just pry it off like that. And the part's bent. So now what we want to do is push this pin out to whatever side that we did not remove the C-clip from. I usually work on this side. So should be able to get it started with our thumb or whatever tool you, whatever you want to use. Now keep in mind here again, there is spring tension on this hammer plunger. That's actually what's giving, you can see here how it, let's see. So that's the action right there. So that part, this is a pretty heavy spring, so you want to be careful to not have that flying out. When we remove this pin, you can see that it's the plunger is sort of held in place by this locking lever. Right, so you just keep that in mind. You might want to have a thumb on there or something. Let's see if we can do this. Take a punch, get the pin out in the tray, and at this point the shell lifter and carrier dog, as it's called, should be able to come out, but that also means that we're releasing tension from this spring and plunger back here. So a thumb on the hammer plunger, and you might have to wiggle this about a little bit and possibly take off some tension from carrier dog plunger. That's got caught on the edge here. Let's see. There we go. Okay, so that was a bit tricky, but you should be able to wiggle it loose. Comes out like this. Again, these parts are welded in place, so you're not going to be able to do anything with that. And at this point, we can remove the carrier dog plunger and its spring from in here. Looks like that. So now what we're left with is we have the sear or C-plate, as APS likes to call it. We have the trigger, plunger, and spring. We have the action bar, and we have the hammer in place. So at this point we're going to remove the sear pin and the sear, and that's what we need the small tool for, because this pin is only partly exposed right here. So you need something very small to get it started. Then with your fingers, if you have small fingers like me, or a pair of pliers, take out the pin, and the sear comes out as well. Here's a mod that I did to the sear. I've added some material to the place where the trigger bar, let's see, I'll have to flip it. So here's my added material down here, and that's how the trigger pushes on the sear. But anyway, I'll cover that in the mods video. So now what we're left with is the hammer pin. So at this point, release, or at least retain pressure on the hammer plunger and push out the pin. And the hammer actually came out with it, that's fine. And so now, since the pin is out, the action lever is going to wiggle about a bit, which means the plunger and spring are going to be able to come up beside it. So plunger and spring, like so. The trigger bar now comes out and up, like that. And the only thing left is a spring here that keeps tension on the action bar that we, I'll see if I can show you how it's attached. So it just unhooks from this, and we're done. So here's the completely stripped trigger housing. Nothing left to do. So that's a fairly simple process. I just watch out for the hammer, spring, and plunger when it's under tension. That can get you. So, right, that's it for the disassembly video. After this video, I'm going to, now that I have everything taken apart, I'm going to be doing a multi-part video series within the video series on all of the mods, changes I've made, some tips and tricks, and kind of how things work and sometimes why they don't work and what you need to look at, that kind of thing, before I actually reassemble everything. So I'm not sure in what order all of this is going to be coming out in, but if you want to do mods, you should probably hold out a bit until those videos are released. So that's it for this video, and I'll see you in the next one.